Outside world, I was the woman who had everything figured out. That's what they said at the firm holiday parties anyway. Vivian Ashworth, 32 years old, youngest named partner in the history of Ashworth & Co. Legal Group. My grandfather built this firm from a one-room office in downtown Cincinnati. My father grew it into a 60-attorney operation with a reputation that stretched to Chicago and back. And when he passed 4 years ago, he left the whole thing, the name, the legacy, the weight of it, to me. I didn't ask for the weight, but I carried it. That's what Ashworth women do. My husband, Thomas, was our managing partner. I'd appointed him myself, 2 years into my tenure, when our previous MP retired. It made sense at the time. Thomas had been at the firm for 8 years. He knew the clients. He knew the staff. He knew me better than anyone, or so I believed. We'd been married for 6 years. We had a daughter, Lily, who was 4 and obsessed with dinosaurs and the color orange. I thought we were happy. I was wrong about a lot of things that year. It started on a Tuesday in March, which is an unremarkable day to have your life upended. But that's when it happened. I had just come back from a deposition in Lexington. 4 hours in a conference room with a hostile witness and opposing counsel who kept interrupting my questions. I was tired. My blazer smelled like the inside of a rental car. I was carrying a box of case files and a lukewarm coffee I'd picked up at the gas station because the airport Starbucks had a line around the corner. The elevator in our building takes forever. Everyone at the firm knows this. You press the button, you wait, you check your phone, you wait some more. I was standing there doing exactly that when a woman came rushing around the corner, clearly trying to make the same elevator I was waiting for. I'd seen her before. Her name was Kelsey. Kelsey Dunn, one of our paralegals. She'd joined the firm maybe 8 months earlier. Young, early 20s, always dressed like she was going somewhere more important than wherever she currently was. Thomas had hired her directly, which I hadn't thought much about at the time. She came around that corner fast and she wasn't looking where she was going and she slammed right into me. The box went one way. The coffee went the other, directly onto the front of my white button-down, hot enough to make me gasp, brown enough to ruin it completely. "Oh," she said. Not "I'm so sorry." Not even, "Are you okay?" Just, "Oh." I set my jaw, counted to 3. "It's fine," I said, because it wasn't fine. But I'm also a professional adult, and this was an accident. "Don't worry about it." I started picking up the files off the floor. She didn't help. She was staring at her phone. "You should be more careful," she said, still not looking up. I stopped. "Excuse me, with where you walk." She glanced at me then, briefly, with an expression I can only describe as the look of someone who has decided they are more important than you and would like you to know it. Some of us are in a hurry. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. She walked in without another word. I stood there in the hallway with coffee soaking through my shirt, holding a stack of scattered files, watching the doors close in front of me. There are moments in life when you feel something shift. Not a big dramatic shift, just a small, quiet turning, like a key moving in a lock. That was one of those moments. I couldn't have told you why. I just felt it. I went to my office, changed into the spare blazer I keep in my closet for exactly these kinds of days, and I pulled up Kelsey Dunn's employee file. Nothing alarming. Good references. Law school graduate, hadn't passed the bar yet, working as a paralegal in the meantime. Assigned to the corporate transactions team, Thomas's team. Direct supervisor listed as Thomas. I closed the file. Told myself I was being paranoid. Went back to work, but something kept pulling at me. The way a loose thread pulls at the corner of your mind when you're trying to sleep. 3 days later, I found out through our office manager, Patrice, who has worked at this firm for 22 years and knows everything that happens within a 5-block radius, that Kelsey had been telling people Thomas was going to leave me. Not directly. The way people say these things indirectly, in low voices over lunch, testing how it lands. I heard he's not happy at home. I heard things are complicated. I heard it's basically already over. I didn't confront Thomas that night. I'm not impulsive. I'm a litigator. I gather information first. I called my college roommate Jess, who is a forensic accountant and who I trust with my life, and I told her I needed a quiet favor. I asked her to look at our personal accounts and flag anything unusual. Then I called our firm's IT director, and asked him to pull an access log for the document management system, specifically, any large file downloads from the corporate transactions folder in the past 90 days. I did not sleep much that week. What Jess found took my breath away. 17 months. That's how long it had been going on, according to the transfer history. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here, a consulting fee to an LLC there. The kind of thing that gets lost in the noise of a busy financial operation. Then larger. 100,000 in October, 75,000 in January. The LLC was registered in Kentucky under a name I didn't recognize, but the registered agent's address was an apartment building in Covington that Jess traced to a lease signed by Kelsey Dunn. Thomas had been funneling money from our firm's client escrow accounts into an LLC he'd set up for her. Client escrow, trust accounts, the most sacred thing in legal practice. The thing the Bar Association takes more seriously than almost anything else. I sat in my car in the parking garage that night, and I did not cry, which surprised me. I think I'd already started grieving somewhere in the back of my mind, without realizing it. What I felt instead was a cold, clarifying anger. The kind that doesn't make you shake. The kind that makes you very, very still. I called my personal attorney, a woman named Beverly who I'd known since law school, and who has a reputation for being relentless. I told her everything. She told me not to say a word to Thomas. Not yet. We needed to document everything, preserve it properly, make sure the chain of evidence was clean before anyone knew we were looking. He's going to deny it, I told her. Of course he is, Beverly said. Let him. The numbers don't lie. I went home that night and I made dinner. Pasta with the jarred sauce Lily likes because it's sweet, the kind I normally won't buy. I gave Lily a bath. I read her 2 dinosaur books and one about a bear who couldn't find his hat. I tucked her in. I kissed her forehead. Thomas sat in the living room watching baseball. He asked how my day was. I said it was long. He said mine too. We did not touch each other. We hadn't, I realized, in a long time. I told myself we were just busy. That's what you tell yourself when you don't want to look directly at something. I lay next to him that night staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, and I thought about the 6 years we'd had together. The good ones. The early apartment with the radiator that clanged all winter, and the Chinese takeout place on the corner. Lily's birth. His hand in mine at my father's funeral. All of it sitting there now, mixed up with this other thing, and I didn't know how to hold them at the same time. By morning, I decided I wouldn't let it destroy me. That was the most important decision I made. Not any of the legal strategy, not the confrontation, not the divorce proceedings. The decision, in that dark, quiet bedroom, that I was going to be okay. That came first. 2 weeks later, I was ready. Beverly had compiled everything into a clean, documented package. The transfers, the LLC records, the lease. IT had confirmed that Thomas had downloaded and deleted several key client correspondence files, likely trying to cover his tracks, but our backup system retained everything. We'd also quietly looped in our outside auditor and had been working in parallel with our State Bar's Ethics Counsel, who I'd contacted confidentially. The morning I chose was a Wednesday. Thomas had a standing 9 o'clock meeting with the corporate transactions team. I let it start. I let him get comfortable. At 9:15, I walked into that conference room. There were 7 people around the table. Thomas was at the head of it. Kelsey was seated to his right, which I now understood was not a coincidence, and had probably never been a coincidence. Thomas looked up when I came in. Vivienne. We're in the middle of, I know, I said. I need 5 minutes. Everyone except Thomas can head out. No one moved at first. Then Patrice, who had been sitting in as admin, caught something in my expression and stood up. When Patrice moves, people follow. The room cleared in about 45 seconds. Kelsey didn't move. That includes you, I said to her. I think I should stay, she said. Steady voice. Chin up. Given that Thomas and I, Kelsey. I kept my voice even. You're a paralegal at my firm. I'm the named partner and majority owner. You can either walk out of this room on your own, Or I can call building security and you can walk out with an escort. Your choice, but make it fast." She looked at Thomas. He didn't look back at her. That was the moment I think she understood that whatever she'd been promised, it wasn't going to materialize the way she'd imagined. She left. I sat down across from my husband. He started to say something. I slid the folder across the table and let him open it himself. I watched his face while he read. I've spent 15 years reading faces across conference tables. I'm good at it. I watched him go through the stages in about 90 seconds flat. Confusion, then recognition, then the particular stillness of someone calculating their options. "This isn't what it looks like," he said. "Thomas." I was almost gentle about it. "I have bank records, wire transfers, an LLC registration, a lease agreement, and 3 months of document access logs. Beverly Cho has copies of everything. The Bar Ethics Office received a preliminary disclosure this morning." I paused. "It's exactly what it looks like." His jaw worked. "You went to the bar before you even talked to me." "You've been doing this for 17 months, I said. "I think we're past the talking stage." He sat back in his chair. The fight went out of him in a way I recognized. Actually, I'd seen it happen to opposing counsel sometimes, in depositions, when they realized the deponent had just said exactly the wrong thing, and there was no recovering. The moment when a person understands that the ground they were standing on is gone. "I was going to tell you," he said. "Were you?" He didn't answer. "There's a car waiting outside," I said. "Your personal belongings from your office have already been boxed. Security will escort you out. Your access has been revoked as of this morning." He looked at me like he was waiting for something. Anger, maybe tears. Something he could push against. I gave him nothing. "What about Lily?" he said. And that was the first crack in the wall I'd built up. Not because it softened me, but because the fact that he asked it now, in this context, as if it were a card he was playing rather than a genuine question, told me everything I needed to know about where we actually were. "My attorney will be in touch with yours," I said. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. "Goodbye, Thomas." He left without a scene, which I hadn't expected. I think the documentation took the wind out of him. You can't argue with paper trails. What came next was ugly, the way these things always are. His attorney sent letters. There were accusations, the standard ones, the ones designed to create leverage rather than reflect reality. He claimed he'd been constructively excluded from firm decisions. He claimed the escrow transfers had been authorized. He claimed a lot of things, none of which were supported by the evidence Beverly had assembled. The bar opened a formal investigation 30 days after my disclosure. Thomas voluntarily surrendered his license 6 weeks after that, which his attorney probably advised, because a full disciplinary hearing would have been significantly worse. The civil suit was settled 14 months later. He repaid the misappropriated funds in full as part of the agreement, plus interest, plus Beverly's fees. The terms were not in his favor. I won't pretend it was clean. It wasn't. There were nights I put Lily to bed, and then sat on the kitchen floor and cried quietly enough that she couldn't hear. There were days I got through on sheer momentum and muscle memory, showing up to depositions and client meetings and staff reviews while running on 4 hours of sleep and the particular grim determination of someone who has no other option. But I got through them. One thing I hadn't anticipated, the response from the staff. I'd worried about how it would land internally, a named partner accusing the managing partner of embezzlement, a very public unraveling, all of it happening inside a firm that has 60 people depending on it for their livelihoods. I worried people would panic. I worried about client flight. What actually happened was that Patrice walked into my office the morning after everything became known and placed a coffee on my desk. Real coffee, from the good place 2 blocks down, not the break room pot, and said, "We've got your back." And then she went back to her desk. That was it. No speech. Just coffee. 37 of our 54 non-partner employees signed an internal letter of support that went to our board. 3 of our largest clients called to express confidence. A senior partner who'd been quietly considering retirement told me he'd decided to stay. I hadn't known I'd built that kind of loyalty. I'd just been showing up and doing the work every day for 4 years, and apparently that accumulates into something. What happened with Kelsey is less dramatic than people probably expect. She was terminated for cause the same morning Thomas left. HR handled it per protocol. She had 30 days on her lease in the Covington apartment, the one Thomas had been funding. And I don't know what came after that because it stopped being my business. I will say this. A few months after everything settled, I received a letter from her, not an apology, exactly. More of an explanation, the kind people write when they're trying to understand their own choices, more than they're trying to account for them to anyone else. She'd believed him, she said. She'd believed all of it. I don't know what to do with that, honestly. I understand it in an abstract way. People believe what they want to believe. Thomas was very good at being believed. That had always been true. It was one of the things I'd loved about him, the way he made you feel certain. I wrote her back. 2 sentences. I wished her well and I meant it, mostly. About Lily, she's doing well. She was 4 when all of this happened, so her understanding of it was limited at the time. She knows her dad doesn't live with us anymore. She knows he spends some weekends at his apartment, and some weekends at his apartment, and some weekends at home. She knows I love her more than anything. She recently decided that her favorite dinosaur is the Ankylosaurus because, and I quote, it has armor. She told me this very seriously at breakfast one morning, like she was filing it for the record. I think about that sometimes. I'm telling this story now, almost 2 years out from that Tuesday in March, because I want to be honest about something. None of it happened the way you see it in movies. There was no single confrontation scene where I walked into a room and delivered a devastating line and everyone's jaw dropped. It was slow and careful and exhausting and mostly very quiet. It was documentation and emails and phone calls with attorneys and late nights doing the math over and over to make sure I had it right before I moved. That's the part that doesn't make for a good story, but it's the part that actually worked. There's one more thing. His name is Owen. Dr. Owen Parrish, cardiac surgeon, Northwestern Medical, whom I met 8 months after everything fell apart, when Lily needed to be seen for a heart murmur that turned out to be benign but terrified me for 2 weeks. He was her cardiologist. He was calm and clear and sat on the floor of the exam room to talk to her at her level about how hearts work, and she listened to every word because he had this manner about him, like he had all the time in the world. We didn't date until she got a clean bill of health and a year had passed, and I'd done enough therapy to know the difference between someone I was drawn to because I was lonely and someone I was drawn to because he was genuinely good. Owen is genuinely good. He brought Lily a stuffed Ankylosaurus for her last birthday. She carried it around for 3 days straight. I'm not saying everything is fixed. I'm not saying the story has a bow on it. I'm saying that I am 32 years old, and I run my grandfather's firm, and my daughter has armor, and I am, against the odds, and in spite of everything, genuinely okay. That feels like enough. More than enough, actually. It feels like the beginning of something. I've thought a lot about what actually made everything fall apart for Thomas. And I don't think it was me. I think it was him, the slow accumulation of small choices that he probably told himself didn't matter. One transfer. One lie. One morning where he looked at the life we built together and decided to take from it rather than add to it. That's how it usually goes. Not one big dramatic moment of corruption, but 100 small ones, each easier than the last, because the first one didn't kill him. There's something clarifying about watching that play out from the other side. I used to think betrayal happened because people were fundamentally different from who you believe them to be. Now I think it happens because people stop paying attention to who they're becoming. Thomas didn't wake up one day deciding to be the kind of man who steals from client trust accounts. He just never stopped himself from becoming him. What I learned about myself during those months was harder to sit with. I'm a litigator. I am trained to see angles, to anticipate, to read a room, and I had missed it, not because I lacked the intelligence, but because I chose not to look. Love does that sometimes. Not in a soft romantic way. In a practical, daily way, you extend trust because that's what partnership requires, and somewhere along the line extending trust became not asking questions I probably should have asked. That's on me. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because understanding it meant I wouldn't do it again. The thing about intelligence is that it doesn't protect you from anything if you don't aim it honestly. You can be the smartest person in the room and still lie to yourself about what you're seeing. The work isn't being smart. The work is being willing to look at uncomfortable things without flinching, and then doing something with what you find. Kelsey is a harder thing to reckon with. She was young and she believed what she wanted to believe, which is a very human thing to do. What I know is that integrity isn't just about what you do when things are hard. It's also about what you refuse to accept, even when accepting it would be easier. At 22, I don't know that I had enough of it either. I can't be too righteous about that. What I can say is this. The women I admire most in my life, my grandmother Beverly, Patrice, they all had one thing in common. When something was taken from them, they didn't collapse and they didn't harden. They recalibrated. They figured out what they actually had left and they built from there. That's not resilience as a concept. That's just the decision, made quietly and without applause, to keep going anyway. Lily has a stuffed ankylosaurus now. She named it Vivian. I didn't ask her to do that. She just did. I think she's going to be okay. I think we both are.